Hello, children. Welcome to Diksha online program. In chemistry, today we are going to start a very interesting topic chemical bonding. I hope everyone will enjoy this particular topic because this is the ultimate what a student need to know for understanding the chemistry in a better way. So let's start the chemical bonding with the first slide. What is a chemical bond? So before going to chemical bond, let us start with our original introduction, recap what we have learned to take up this topic, what is the necessity. According to Dalton, atom is the smallest particle we know, and also we have seen atom has no independent existence. It has to combine with same type of an atom, or it has to combine with different type of an atom in order to attain stability. So every atom tries to attain stability, which is the stability of inert gas, either by losing an electron, gaining an electron, or sharing an electron. So in the course of this, atoms combine with same type of atoms or different type of atoms to form elements, molecules, or compounds. In this particular slide, we'll be learning about what is the force of interaction that is existing between two constituent particles or atoms, which makes them to bind strongly to each other. Now if I say two atoms are bonded to each other and they are strongly bonded to each other, what type of force makes them to stick to each other or make them to bind to each other with respect to the nature of an atom, nature of forces, and in terms of electrons. So here the chemical bond is defined in such a way, it is a type of intermolecular or interionic interaction which holds two constituents together. So some of the common types of bonds: ionic bond, covalent bond, coordinate covalent bond, metallic bond, and hydrogen bond. So five types of bonds are the most common type of bonds we see between any two constant particles. Again I'm repeating, what are those five? Number one, ionic bond. Number two, covalent bond. Number three, coordinate covalent bond. Number four, metallic bond. And number five, hydrogen bond. The pictures which is shown here will clearly give you an information. What is an ionic bond? Ionic bond is particularly observed between two types of elements. An element which belongs to a category of metals and another element which belongs to category of non-metals. If you see the second one, both hydrogens are non-metals. And you see the metallic bond is only shown by metals. So if you categorize the total elements in the periodic table into two categories, metals and non-metals, in the periodic table, S block, P block, D block, F block. If you divide the total elements in the periodic table into four blocks, depending on the last coming electron is settling or entering into which particular orbital, we classified them into S, P, D, F. We come across in S orbital only metals, D orbital and F orbital only metals. The only place in the periodic table where we see a metal, non-metal, and metalloid, all the three categories of elements present is P block. Now if you have the classification of the elements into metals and non-metals, the bond that exists between a metal and non-metal is ionic bond. The bond that exists between the two non-metals is covalent bond. The bond which exists between two metals or more than two metals, it's commonly a metallic bond. Moving forward, bond energy. If you talk about this particular one, if any two particles or constant particles are combining, they need to form a bond. Whether they may form ionic bond, covalent bond, metallic bond, it doesn't matter. If any two constant particles are forming a bond, for the formation of 1 mole of bond of same type, what is the total energy released is taken as bond energy. Before going to this word, let me give you one more clarity. Chemical bond. A chemical bond is always exothermic. Chemical bond is always exothermic in nature. So if you say chemical bond is exothermic, energy will be always released in the process. Chemical bond is always exothermic. So any bond that is formed between any two constituent particles, if there is a bond existing, for the formation of bond there should be release of energy. No other alternative. Now it is well known that energy is released. Now how much energy is released for formation of 1 mole of bond of same type? So if you say between two constant particles an ionic bond is formed, for forming an ionic bond how much energy? Again, if you take another two constant particles for forming the same ionic bond, what is the energy released? So for formation of 1 mole of a particular type of bond, what is the energy release? It is taken as bond energy. I hope it is clear. Now, based on the nature of atoms, we are going to decide the bond type and bond character. Let us imagine the two atoms bonded in a diatomic molecule may or may not have same electronegativity. So now the concept of electronegativity tells us how to deal with nature of bond. So if you consider two atoms are present, based on electronegativity of atoms, let us consider three examples taken here. If A and B are two constituent atoms which are combining with each other, A and B have the electronegativity 1, electronegativity 4. The difference in the electronegativity, you can see the difference is huge, and the in electronegativity difference in electronegativity is equals to 3. In the second case, difference in electronegativity is 0.5. In the third case, we can say the difference in the electronegativity is very less, approximately close to 0. Same way, if you write B bond B, if I take these two, where electronegativity is greater than 2 or greater than, we can say like this, electronegativity greater than 2, and here also the difference is approximately 0. Let us consider the 4 cases over here. Just keep your eye. What is important for us? Whenever you see an electronegativity of an atom, if the electronegativity of an atom is mostly less than 1.5, they mostly come under the category of metals. Less than 1 also we can say, appropriately we can say 1 also. Most of the metals will come between 1 only, 1 or less than 1. So less than 1.5. If I am taking electronegativity greater than 1.5, I'm not saying all elements, most of the elements, please remember this word, I'm not using the word all, but mostly we observe in periodic table with electronegativity greater than 1.5, they end up as non-metals. There may be some elements with 1.6, 1.7 metals also, but they will be slightly acting as metalloids. But pure metal, if it has to be a pure metal, it has to have an electronegativity less than 1.5. So coming to this, the first category I'm going to divide depending on electronegativity. So as I have previously taken, this electronegativity value indicates this is a metal. This electronegativity value indicates this is a non-metal. And what is the condition? If a metal and non-metal combines, what type of bond is possible over here though? If a metal and non-metal combines, the possible bond is ionic bond. Correct? Very good. Now, from this, I can give you a conclusion. If the difference in electronegativity of a two elements is exceeding 1.7, remember this one. Difference in electronegativity exceeds 1.7, then the nature of bond is ionic bond. That means if the difference in the electronegativity of two atoms is greater than 1.7, it is an ionic bond. Now here you can see the difference is 3. And do we have any doubt in saying that it is an ionic bond? No. So this is my first case. Come to the second case. Coming to the second case, now come to this particular experiment, A and B. Electronegativity of A is 2.5. So what does it conclude? It is a non-metal. Electronegativity of B is 3. So it is also a non-metal. So what can be the nature of bond between A and B? It should be a covalent bond. Is there any doubt in it? No. Reason, two non-metals. In the previous slide we have seen, if two non-metals combine, the resultant bond will be covalent bond. In this case, in this experiment, the difference in electronegativity is 0.5. From this I can give a conclusion. What is the conclusion I need to remember? If difference in electronegativity is less than 1.7, it should be considered as a covalent bond. Clear? Coming to the third case, if I am taking the third case, electronegativity is less than 1.5, electronegativity is less than 1.5, two same atoms. The value is less than 1.5, so this should be indicating this is a metal and this is also a metal. And between two metals, what type of bond can exist? Yes, metallic bond. It should be a metallic bond, where the difference is approaching 0, nearly 0. If they are same atoms, it is equal to 0 or even close to 0. Between any two metals, what is the bond that will be existing? Metallic bond. Coming to example number 4, if electronegativity is greater than 2, electronegativity greater than 2. What does it mean? Greater than 2 means it is a non-metal. Greater than 2 means it is also a non-metal. Having a non-metal and non-metal, electronegativity difference is equals to 0. What type of bond can be possible between this? Again, this leads to a covalent bond. But a clarity is required here. There are two cases where we got covalent bond. Here a covalent bond, here a covalent bond. So what does that clarity we are going to take? If the difference in electronegativity is less than 1.7, but still it is not equal to 0, then we say the nature of the covalent bond is polar covalent bond. If it is a covalent bond, difference in electronegativity is equals to 0, then we say it is pure covalent bond or non-polar covalent bond. So here we are classifying the total nature of bonds into 4 categories. Once again I am repeating. In the example number 1, it is the bond between two metal and non-metals. A metal and non-metal combination leads to ionic bond. In the example number 2, non-metal and non-metal combination leads to covalent bond. In example number 3, bond between metal and metal leads to metallic bond. Number 4, a non-metal and non-metal leads to covalent bond. But in the category, we have second case and fourth case where two non-metal combinations leading to covalent bond. Is the two nature of bonds or bond characters same? No. What is that? If the two non-metals combine such that their electronegativity difference is not equal to 0 and less than 1.7, then they are called as polar covalent bond. Covalent bond with less ionic character. When two non-metals combine such that their electronegativity difference does not differ much and up close to 0, then they are said to be the non-polar covalent bond or pure covalent bond. So coming to this particular one, the bond formed between two atoms depends upon the values of electronegativity, as we have seen in the previous slides. The type of the bond and the character of the bond can be easily predicted from their electronegativity values. I hope now you know how we are predicting, as I have shown you in 4 cases how we can predict. When atoms wide difference in the electronegativity values combine, the bond is distinctly ionic. So I can say here itself, in the difference in the electronegativity, again I'm mentioning greater than 1.7. Then the nature of the bond is distinctly ionic. Correct? Okay. Now let us take an example. Sodium fluoride. Fluorine atom is highly electronegative. In the sodium fluoride, let me give you sodium and fluorine. Electronegativity of sodium is 0.9 or 8 will take. Electronegativity of fluorine is 4. Approximately 0.8 sodium if I am taking, and fluorine is 4. It is similar to like 1 and 4. The difference in the electronegativity is exceeding 1.7. So what is the nature of bond that should present between them? There is no doubt, undoubtedly it should be an ionic bond. It should be an ionic bond. But we are not concerned about that particular one. We are only talking about what is the importance of this. So in the example over here, 28127, sodium has, if I am taking sodium, it has 281 electronic configuration, and fluorine has 27 electronic configuration. Atomic number of sodium is 11 and atomic number of fluorine is 9. Sodium has one excess electron in the outermost valency shell, and fluorine has one deficiency of electron in the outermost valency shell. So to get 8 inert gas configuration, of 8 electrons, this has to be given away. So it has to lose 1 electron. Whereas to get 8 electrons in the inert gas configuration, fluorine has to take 1 electron. It has to take 1 electron. So now sodium is ready to lose 1 electron and fluorine is ready to take 1 electron. This results in the formation of Na, a radical, positive radical or positive ion, and this results in the formation of fluorine, a negative radical or negative ion, we can say. So what will be there between a positive and negative species? The force of attraction. So there will be a force of attraction that will be present between sodium and fluorine, which results in the formation of ionic bond. When atoms having slight electrode negativity difference values, examples hydrogen and chlorine. Hydrogen electronegativity 2.5, chlorine electronegativity 3.0. If I take hydrogen and chlorine into consideration, with a slight difference in electronegativity, what is the difference you can see here? A difference of how much? A maximum 0.5 unit. That much only is the difference you can see. It is not much. The what pair of electrons are not shared equally between the two atoms. It is not shared equally. What will happen? The bond pair of electrons are attracted more by chlorine, because chlorine has more electronegativity. Sir, why? Here we should understand the meaning of the word electronegativity. What is the meaning of the word electronegativity says? It is the tendency of a bonded atom to attract the shared electron pair closely towards itself. Again, I'm repeating, it is the tendency of a bonded atom to attract the shared electron pair closely towards itself. Remember, I'm using the keyword here, bonded atom. That means an isolated atom will not have a character electronegativity. So if you talk about a hydrogen atom, it has no electronegativity. Chlorine atom, it has no electronegativity. But if that atom is a bonded atom, now chlorine gets the electronegativity character, hydrogen gets the electronegativity character. So now tendency of a bonded atom to attract the shared electron towards itself. So among hydrogen and chlorine, which atom has more electronegativity or more tendency to attract? Chlorine. So the electrons pair is attracted more by chlorine, and so the electrons are moving closer to chlorine, away from hydrogen. So chlorine acquires partial negative charge, so we indicate with the delta negative, and hydrogen acquires partial positive charge. So hydrogen will be given delta positive. So we say in H, a bond with Cl, the electron pair is slightly attracted towards chlorine. So we say electron pair lies close to chlorine. Chlorine gets delta negative, hydrogen gets delta positive charge. Hence, the bond formed between hydrogen and chlorine becomes polar covalent bond. I told you electronegativity difference, electronegativity difference is less than 1.7 and not equals to 0, then the nature of the bond is polar covalent bond. Polar covalent bond. Now, what is the meaning of polar covalent bond? In other words, the meaning of the bond is the bond has partial ionic character. It is found that ionic character of bond goes on increasing as the electronegativity difference between the two atoms goes on increasing. So, a difference of more than 1.7 causes bond to become ionic. When, third point, when atoms having similar electronegativity, meaning electronegativity difference equals to 0, then the bond formed is non-polar. Remember, non-polar, shared electron pair is equally shared, so the bond is non-polar covalent bond. This is between hydrogen and hydrogen, chlorine and chlorine. So where no difference in electronegativity, such type of cases, this will be the condition. So if I am taking an example, third, fourth case, when atoms with a low electronegativity combines, so they are taken as metals. So when two metals combines, the bond formed between them, it is metallic bond, and this is only found in terms of metals. As we said, less than 1.5, mostly those comes under the category of metals. Clear? So the four categories are completed. Moving to individual bond discussion. Ionic bond. What is ionic bond? It is formed between two atoms by transfer of one or more valence electrons from one atom to another, resulting in electrostatic force of attraction. So the attraction between positive and negative ions, this is electrostatic force of attraction. Formation of sodium chloride, if you see, so the electronic configuration of sodium, normally the sodium electronic configuration is 281. It is given as 2 8 1s2 2s2 2p6 2 plus 6 8 and 3s1. This is 281 configuration. Electronic configuration of chlorine is, chlorine electronic configuration is 287. So 1s2 2s2 2p6 2 plus 6 8 3s2 3p5 2 plus 5 7. So this is your electronic configuration 281 287. When sodium reacts with chlorine, sodium loses its outermost electron. What is the outermost electron? This electron, it has to lose one electron from here, and that will be in 3s. So 3s electron it will lose and form uni positive ion. So losing of that, it gets uni positive ion formation. So this is your equation. Collectively, the positive sodium ion with inert gas configuration neon is formed will have the following configuration: 2 8. So it gets inert gas configuration of 2 8. 1s2 2s2 2p6. Chlorine accepts the electron donated by sodium atoms and forms negative ion. So one electron is coming to the chlorine, and that chlorine forms this because chlorine has 287. Having 287, if it takes plus one electron, this converts into 288. So it gets inert gas configuration, and that where Cl minus will be having inert gas configuration by getting 1s2 2s2 2p6 3s2 3p6 configuration. The two ions combine by electrostatic force of attraction and results in the formation of ionic bond. So Na plus combines with Cl minus, results in the formation of NaCl. Already I have explained you the formation of ionic bond in terms of sodium and fluorine. So I am just showing you the electronic configurations and the formation of bond NaCl. Hope it is clear. Now we'll move into the next slide. Covalent bond. What is a covalent bond? A covalent bond is defined by Lewis as the bond formed by sharing of pair of electrons, sharing of pair of electrons in the valence shell of two different atoms. So in the shared pair, what is important is in the shared pair, each atom contributes one electron. So if I am saying an example, A has one electron here. Okay, let us take this is the electron A has. B has one electron here. Let us take this is an X is an electron over B. Now A has to contribute one electron, B has to contribute one electron. When both A and B come closer and closer, A gives its electron, B gives its electron, and results in the formation of covalent bond. So this is the shared electron pair. The shared electron pair will come between A and B, and now this electron belongs to A and this electron belongs to B. So now if I am taking A, these electrons revolve around the nucleus of A, these electrons revolve around the nucleus of B, being in the center. Now what will happen? Any electron which revolves around the nucleus of a particular species, those electrons are said to belong to that particular nucleus only. So if I am taking this, what will happen in this particular case? Just try to understand the shared electron pair whichever is present here, once they take the revolution around A and then takes the revolution around B, where every time an atom A experiences an overall 2 electrons around its nucleus in the valence shell, and B experiences an overall 2 electrons in the outermost shell and not one as before. So now in the previous case, if you see here, A experiences only 1 electron in its outermost nucleus, B experiences only 1 electron in its outermost nuclei. But now A experiences 2 electrons, B experiences 2 electrons, and this is called covalent bond. Now in the formation of covalent bond, depending on the nature of orbital overlap, we are going to see that orbital overlap, we are dividing the bonds into two types, sigma bond and pi bond. So what is sigma bond, what is pi bond, we'll be seeing now. So before understanding the types of covalent bonds, we need to understand this particular one. According to the atomic model, we have uh, orbits. The Bohr's theory says that orbits are the place where electron will be present, or electrons will be revolving around the nucleus. But later the quantum mechanics which has come into existence, we came to know that it is not just orbits. Orbits are again subdivided into subshells. Subshells are having orbitals. So the ultimate place where electrons will be present is in orbitals, not just in orbit. Orbitals are inside the orbits, just like the racks inside your shelves. Different shelves you have in almaras. Like same way, in a given orbit, I can assume this with a simple example. Let us consider in your school, you have a big school building. The building is completely taken as an atom. Inside that building, you have different floors: ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor. So the floors can be considered to be orbits. And inside and in each floor, if you observe, there will be different rooms, and each room can be taken as subshells. Imagine, and within the rooms you have benches where exactly chairs or benches where students go and sit. They don't sit on the floor, so there are required places. They cannot go wherever they want. So building is considered as an orbit. Inside the building, floors, each floor is considered as subshell. Inside the floor or within the floor, rooms are taken as the orbitals or subshells, where these particular within the room you have the benches where electrons will be occupied or students will be occupied. So this is how we can compare. So everything is inside the building only, no? So in the same way here electrons are in. Now we are talking with respect to orbitals. So what type of orbitals an orbit can have? In the ultimate, there are four type of orbitals it can have maximum: s, p, d, f. Shapes of s orbital is spherical, so we represent s orbital diagrammatically with a spherical shape. P orbitals we represent with a dumbbell shapes, and d orbital double dumbbell, f orbital diffusive. For now, we are not going into the complicated structures of d and f. We are only confining to s and p. So s is shown with the spherical shape, and p is shown with dumbbell and dumbbell shapes, where you can see the dumbbell shape. We are considering the x-axis in this direction, y-axis in this direction, and z-axis is considered over here. So we are taking the x-axis, y-axis, z-axis. If your dumbbell shaped orbital is along the y-axis, it is named as py orbital. If it is along the x-axis, it is named as px orbital. If it is along z-axis, named as pz orbital. So your p orbitals are classified into px orbital, py orbital, and pz orbital. Now these orbitals, we are considering the z x-axis. We consider this x-axis as the internuclear axis. Let us consider this axis as internuclear axis. If you consider x-axis is internuclear axis, that means the axis which passes through the nucleus of two bonded atoms. If any axis that is present which can pass through the bonded atoms, that axis is taken as internuclear axis. Let us understand this one like this. If you have two atoms, let us imagine this is atom A, this is atom B. If I draw this axis, can it pass through the two atoms? No. If I write this in the if I write this axis, can it pass through two atoms? No. So this is also does not pass. But if I write this, can it pass through the two? Yes. So this is taken as internuclear axis. So only this particular one is considered as internuclear axis, and these are not taken into internuclear axis. So this is the major important point which we need to understand. The internuclear axis is the axis which passes through the nucleus of two bonded atoms. Going forward, let me take you this particular one. If you have hydrogen, electronic configuration of hydrogen is 1s1. So it has only s orbitals, so it is represented with a spherical shell. Moving forward to sodium, it also has 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1. When compared to 1, 3 is a large one, so the size of this will be slightly bigger. It will be more, but still the shape of that is spherical because the outermost shell is S. Same way, if you take fluorine, you have 1s2, 2s2, 2p5. So the outermost is which one? P. Now you will have an outermost shell, an orbital which can be a p, a dumbbell shaped orbital, having one electron each. So they will be having one electron each. They will be having one electron each. That's the only point. So same type, if I am considering, if I have an s orbital, imagine if I have another s orbital from atom A coming from atom B, what way they can overlap? It can come from any direction, whether it comes from here, whether it comes in this direction, it comes in this direction, or it comes in this direction. Does is there any change A approaching B from any direction? No. Reason, B is a spherical orbital and A is also a spherical orbital, so there is no difference in it. So A and B can overlap along the internuclear axis, only along internuclear axis, because any axis becomes internuclear axis in terms of spherical orbital. So this is only one possibility. Let us come to the second one. So keep this as SS overlapping. SS overlapping. Now if I am taking an s orbital, if I am taking a p orbital, what will be this one? If I am taking, this is px orbital, s orbital with px orbital, what will be the resultant? This s orbital overlaps with p orbital, resulting in the formation of sp overlapping. Sp overlapping. So this is the second case. Even if you bring an s orbital with this particular one, this direction will not happen, this direction will not happen, but it can go and attack from here. So what will happen? Ns will go and attack from this side, because s orbital have no directional property. It can go and attack from this side, so it also forms an sp overlapping. But if you observe this overlapping, here is the nucleus, here is the nucleus. Can you draw a line connecting the two nucleus? Yes. Internuclear axis is possible. Can you connect the two nucleus here? Yes. Internuclear axis is possible in this case also. Now, if you observe this particular one, in all the three cases, we say the overlapping takes place along internuclear axis. So we say this type of bond is called as sigma bond. This type of bond which takes place along internuclear axis is termed as sigma bond, where wherever an s orbitals involve in overlapping, that means hydrogen, alkali metal and alkaline earth metals, wherever these orbitals atoms or orbital involved in overlapping, it only leads to which type of bond? It only leads to sigma bond. Second, the most important one, pp overlapping. Let us talk about pp overlapping. Now what is pp overlapping? You have a p orbital and another p orbital can overlap along x-axis. So this is a px and this is px, can undergo overlapping. If x-axis overlapping is done, and y-axis and y-axis, once already x-axis is fixed as internuclear axis is fixed as x-axis, this is fixed, then py and py cannot overlap along internuclear axis, they have to overlap only in this way. So I'll be taking this, overlapping in this direction along x-axis, but the overlapping is happening along y-axis. This is overlapping perpendicular to internuclear axis. Same way, this one overlaps with another orbital where x-axis is in this direction, y-axis is in this direction. This is going to be the z-axis, where y-axis is taken in this direction. This is going to be y-axis. It is overlapping along z-axis. So what will be the condition overlapping here? This is again overlapping perpendicular to internuclear axis. So whenever you have overlapping, here two types, pp overlapping along internuclear axis, this is first case. Second case, pp overlapping perpendicular to internuclear axis. This leads to sigma bond and this leads to pi bond. So we are classifying the bonds into two types, One is sigma bond, the other one is pi bond. So let us see what is sigma bond. A sigma bond is formed between two atoms when their atomic orbitals containing unpaired electrons overlap along their axis. This is internuclear axis, we can see. Pi bond is formed when two atomic orbitals containing unpaired electrons overlap sidewise. So perpendicular to internuclear axis. We can see this is your internuclear axis. These are perpendicular to internuclear axis. Where we can see this is internuclear axis. Differences between sigma and pi bonds. These are formed along axis, so axial overlapping, perpendicular to the axis, sidewise, so sidewise overlapping. SS overlapping, SP overlapping, and PP overlapping can be possible in sigma, but only PP can form pi bond. I have shown you. Which is more effective is sigma bond formation is more effective than pi bond formation. Sigma bond is strong bond, pi bond is a weak bond. Between any two atoms, only one sigma bond can be formed. But after a sigma bond is formed, the first formed bond is this one. First bond between atoms. Between atoms, the first formed bond will be sigma. Once the sigma bond is formed, internuclear axis is decided. So corresponding to that, the pi bond can be formed. So if you see the px overlap has sigma over. Now y-axis and z-axis can come because still two axes are available for overlapping. So the two leftover bonds. So one bond is formed. If you say between two atoms A and B, three bonds are formed. The first formed bond will be sigma. The remaining two bonds will be pi. So it has two pi bonds and one sigma bond. Why only three bonds can be possible between any two atoms is because we have only three axes, x-axis, y-axis, z-axis. If one is forming sigma, the remaining two will form pi. Clear? Now free rotation is possible across the sigma bond. So if I am taking this one, a line, if I draw, I can freely rotate across this axis, rotating the bond. Wheels across the vehicles, you can see they will be along one axis, so you can rotate it freely. But can you rotate anything like this? Can you rotate across this? If you rotate here, can you rotate this particular one freely? We cannot do it. Reason, this is not just this one, we have to consider like this. See double bond, see you have an axis over here. If I'm rotating, there will be a bond which is formed over here. This will get distracted. So you cannot freely rotate a pi bond where you can rotate across a sigma bond. That is the major key. Hydrogen bond, it is an electrostatic attraction that exists between hydrogen atom of one molecule and electronegative atom of another molecule. Consider the hydrogen bonding in the following example. If I am taking two different molecules like this, each molecule is a polar molecule, meaning difference in electronegativity between the molecules is less than 1.7, but not equals to 0. In this case also, difference in the electronegativity is less than 1.7 but not equals to 0. When we consider this particular case, hydrogen bonding in these two cases, the first bond, if you see the hydrogen atom which is connected to any of the most electronegative atoms, the most electronegative atoms are fluorine, oxygen, nitrogen. So hydrogen bond, this is the restriction, they should be either fluorine, oxygen, nitrogen, covalently bonded to hydrogen, this should be the first condition. Second, in turn this hydrogen is again having partial positive charge, will be ready to attract the most electronegative element with a negative charge. So this will be attracting the most electronegative element with a partial negative charge. Again, these most electronegative elements will be fluorine, oxygen, nitrogen. So if a hydrogen atom is in between two most electronegative atoms, that hydrogen is more willingly forming a strong electrostatic force of attraction, and that electrostatic force of attraction is taken as hydrogen bond. Coming to the slide, Hydrogen bond is formed between hydrogen atom and electronegative atom. Hydrogen bond is observed in molecules where hydrogen atom is bonded to highly electronegative atom like fluorine, oxygen or nitrogen. It is a weak when compared to ionic bond, but has an order of 10 to 40 kilojoule per mole, which is exactly 5 to 10% to the bond energy of a covalent bond 300 to 400 kilojoules. So 10% of 400 is 40. So it is a bond strength of a hydrogen bond is slightly lower than covalent bond, but it is just 5 to 10% less than the covalent bond in its strength. So this is about the hydrogen bond. So you can see here in the example, if I am taking the water, this is water and this is water and this is water. So water molecule is having hydrogen bonding. Now thick bonds which are present, these are taken as covalent bonds. This thick bonds are covalent bond. This thick bond is covalent bond. This thick bonds are covalent bonds. But you can see the dotted bonds here. Yes, these dotted bonds are hydrogen. Now you see the hydrogen atom is between two oxygens only or not? Yes, this is the nature of the bond which we call as hydrogen bonding. So we can also have an examples like HF and two HF molecules. If you have two HF molecules between a fluorine and hydrogen, also we can say hydrogen bonding. In ammonia also we can say hydrogen is there and another hydrogen is there. Now we can say between a hydrogen and nitrogen also we can have a hydrogen bonding. So these are some of the examples where hydrogen bond can exist. Moving to the last slide, let us come to the homework problems now. The first one, condition for formation of ionic bond. It is very clear. Difference in the electronegativity value which will make a bond ionic. And what is the electronic configuration of chlorine? Differences between sigma bond and pi bond. And what is hydrogen bond? Usually where it is usually observed. I think every single question we have explained in detail in the slides. So go through that, again find an answer. If not, join the live tutorial immediately after 10 minutes of this class. We'll have the live tutorial, we'll have the discussion of the doubts and also on the homework problems. Thank you. Have a nice day.